Julian Segal, Matt Halliday, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
A lot going on, obviously, with Caltex at the moment. But Julian, perhaps to you first, as a supplier of fuel to much of our transport industry and air, how are you being affected by Corona and what do you see the prospects?
Certainly that's an area that we are watching very carefully. Up to now we haven't been seriously impacted. The volumes that we are watching carefully is airline carriers. We expect that might be affected to the extent of about 5 to 10%. The volumes of diesel, which is closely related to jet fuel, have not been affected yet, and the supply into mining, for example, hasn't been affected.
Right. But Matt, I mean, you're the incoming CEO, you've been the CFO. Does this concern you going forward in terms of next year's results?
Look, I think what we demonstrated with the results we delivered today is the resilience of the business, the strength of the asset position.
Yes, you called it an excellent result, really.
So I think against very tough market conditions, which we saw through 2019, be it refining margins, be it retail fuel margins, we actually delivered pretty strong underlying performance with a focus on continuous improvement through the business.
And Julian, just in terms of your people, you've got people in Asia as well. How are they handling the virus situation?
So, as usual, we put safety first, and the team in Singapore reacted very cautiously and effectively. Literally, we're running a virtual office now in Singapore, people working from home. So if one of the people is affected, it's not going to affect the whole business.
Right. Back here, in your senior executive team, you, of course, are departing in very early March. So you've made some changes. You've got Matt Halliday moving up from CFO to acting CEO, and then you've got Louise Warner, who was in charge of fuels and infrastructure, now in a new role as COO. Is that she's going to do the operations, and Matt's going to deal with all these suitors? Is he?
So Matt is going to be running the business. I'll let him talk to that. But the idea, in principle, is that Matt is the CEO. Yes. He's got the reins of the business, but obviously because of the offers on the table now, he's going to have to focus to an extent on those particular processes. He's got significant experience in that area, and I think he's best, no question in my mind, he's best suited to deal with those. To help him make the time to focus on those particular areas, I think it's quite smart to put Louise in the position of a CEO. She's absolutely excellent at operations, and so I think the two together will make a formidable team.
So Matt, who have we got on the table? Because obviously this is crucial to the future of Caltex. We've got a number of potential scenarios. The Canadians, Couche-Tard, looking at buying the whole thing. Then you've got who you've offered conditional access to for due diligence, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've received the latest proposal from Couche-Tard at $35.25 per share. On that basis, the board decided that the right next phase was to push them into due diligence, and so we're about to enter that phase now on a non-exclusive basis. We're also in the process of considering the proposal that then lobbed from EG, and we're currently working through that evaluation process.
So EG are basically these two billionaires from Britain, and they're the mob that bought your Woolworths retail assets last year, is that right?
They bought the Woolworths petrol stations from Woolworths.
Yes.
We're the fuel supplier to that network. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So that scenario, though, would involve EG taking over the retail side of the business, but the fuels and infrastructure side would then be floated off.
Yeah, so the proposal from EG is to buy all of Caltex for $3.9 billion in cash, and then a newly listed share in what would effectively be the fuels and infrastructure business.
All these deals must be incredibly complicated because of the national interest around the fuels and infrastructure side.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of complexity when you look at whichever pathway the business might take, and you look at the Couche-Tard proposal. We'll move that through due diligence. The EG proposal we need to fully evaluate. But I think you're right that Caltex sits on some extremely significant assets that are privileged when you look at the real estate and when you look at the competitive advantage that it offers us to deliver value for our shareholders. And what's really being recognised through these offers is we have really attractive property assets, we have really attractive infrastructure assets. At Ampol in Singapore that Julian referred to, we have a business that is creating a lot of value, and I think these bids are recognising really the underlying competitive advantage we have there.
And Julian, really these two suitors seem to be most interested though in the retail outlets, and you're rebranding. You've rebranded back to Ampol.
I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this moment. I'm genuine in what I'm saying. We're an Australian company. We have proven ourselves to be an Australian company. Well, I'm referring to the unfortunate events of the bushfires later, this tragedy, but it's so true, the difference between Caltex, the Caltex people and the rest, where we've been involved heavily in supporting the communities, in supporting the Defence Force, in supporting the rural fire efforts. And we've been recognized by federal government, state and local government. And that was done because of the Australian values of the Caltex people. And Caltex stands for Caltex for California, Texas. We're not from California, we're not from Texas, we're from Australia. And what Ampol is all about is saying we're Australian. I don't know if you remember the tagline, I'm as Australian as Ampol.
Yes.
I'm really excited about the renewal and the rolling across of the new brand.
Right.
And it's going to be refreshed, and it's going to be sharp.
Yes.
And it's going to be successful.
You also potentially have an Australian suitor which might come on the scene separately in Macquarie Bank, is that right?
I think you should ask Macquarie.
I might just do that.
I think the point though that you're making, you're right. I think, just repeating what Matt said, we've got a business that is very valuable to different people. Yeah. And I'm really proud of the fact that the company has done so well to attract so much attention.
You've got a lot of growth on the international side, Matt, as well to talk about, haven't you?
Yeah, so I think there's been a fantastic platform established by Julian and the team over the last number of years to establish the Ampol trading and shipping business out of Singapore. That has enabled us to grow in New Zealand through the acquisition of Gull, a 20% interest in the sea oil business in the Philippines. So really taking the skills and capabilities that we have here in Australia and really exporting those capabilities offshore.
Do you think there is a value in Caltex today that perhaps neither the market nor the bidders have quite appreciated yet in terms of perhaps the short position that Australia's in?
Yeah, so I think the attraction of the customer, the stable, rateable customer position we have, that means we have a very rateable short because Australia is short refining capacity, and that is highly attractive to some of the oil majors. You combine that with the infrastructure position that we have, so down at Kurnell, for instance, we have the ability to bring in the largest ships, the ability to store and blend products. So you put all that together right through to the customer, and across the whole value chain, we have the ability to create a lot of value. Even as we see the variability and the volatility that we see through markets, it means that across that entire value chain, we can play quite a number of tunes to make sure that we're maximising value at any given market condition.
Do either of you have a feel for when this whole takeover situation might be ironed out?
Oh, look, I think there's still some way to run. Clearly, we've entered into the DD phase with Couche-Tard, but there's plenty of interest from other parties. I think the important thing from our point of view, though, is we need to explore those transactions at the same time as ensuring that we continue to run the business very well, deliver strong performance for our shareholders, and deliver safely and reliably for our customers.
And in terms of timing of this takeover, obviously it's been a tough year in terms of pressure on refiner margins and on retail margins. Is that going to impact the price that shareholders are going to be able to get for Caltex?
Yeah, I think what we've demonstrated in the result we've delivered today is 2019 was a tough year for refining margins, but we delivered strong underlying improvement to help offset the impact of that. I think there's a general acceptance that refining margins tend to be cyclical. Equally on the retail fuel side, We saw some improvement in the fourth quarter of last year, and when we look at the AIP data on retail margins, there's some encouraging signs to start this year.
Julian, this is probably the last time I'll be speaking to you as Chief. You feel you're leaving, even though it's obviously a very moving space that you're leaving it in good hands, and are you going to be available if need be?
Let me start. I don't think I'll be needed that much, because indeed the Caltex leadership team is a very strong team, extremely capable people, full of energy, full of knowledge, and I think Matt is a good example of that. He's joined us less than a year ago. He's already commanding a tremendous knowledge of the business, and he put in place significant initiatives that made the business better. So I have no doubt in my mind at all that Caltex is in very good hands, and Caltex has got a bright future regardless in which form it's going to be.
Julian Segal, Matt Halliday, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.